Hey buddy, it's Carm here. I'm coming to you on a Thursday afternoon. A little bit of an Indian summer day. It's chilly and rainy throughout the week, but today you're getting a little bit of a nice interlude. Probably in the low 70s. It's quite warm, and I figured I'd come out and do this. Maybe the last one of the year outside, possibly. But you never know. You never know with Chicagoland. But wanted to come on and share some more listens from throughout the last week or so. Real quick, wanted to do an addendum to the previous video, responding to Shannon's favorite individuals in music. Yeah, I had 3 artists that were off to the side that I've forgotten to put in the main pile for the video. So, just share these real quick. Jani, a composer, keyboardist, kind of like Calico, someone I heard around the same time as him, and a real special link to a dear friend who's since departed. We shared a real bond, mutual love of both of their musics, and enjoyed keeping up with him over the years. I haven't liked everything he's done, admittedly. Some albums more than others, but I always go back to at least the early stuff, which just still moves me after all these years. So, yeah. Jani? Terry Ripdahl? Guitarist, composer, improviser, just incredible musical talent overall. I know Jeff was mentioning him recently, Jeff Calico Silver, who I think besides Gary and myself are probably, I'd say, the largest Terry Ripdahl fan I'm aware of. And he'd referred to him as having a great soul in his music, which I'd very much agree. His guitar sound, especially in whatever context he's playing in, it just has this incredible singing quality, very vocal, so expressive, and a whole range of emotions. Sometimes felt at once, but and really for me, it was one of the earliest ECM artists I got into when I was really starting to almost obsess over the label, really, by about 95 or so. So he was a real good bringing me even further into that. So, yeah, Terry Ripdahl. And finally, for these 3, Dick Sutton. Not a musician, and I guess something of a producer. He had started the Valley of the Sun publishing company back in the early 70s. Books, tapes on meditation and guided hypnosis, but also had a music branch of the label in the early 80s. And it was really a part of my own introduction to what's known as New Age music when it was early on, and they were kind of discovering and finding their way. And some of the more quirky, off-the-wall aspects of it, as they were discovering the music itself. You could hear a lot of that in the artists of that label, and it was really him, putting all that together, and and they're all kind of learning together, learning as they went, and it was a nice touchstone in general, for me personally, and it's quite rare now, a lot of that music, but you could find a lot of it online to listen to, and I still find it really enjoyable. So, yeah, Dick Sutton. And now on to the next 3, the main 3. Paul Berliner with Kudu. The Sun Rises Late Here. It's an artist I've only been into for a few years now. Actually, this is one of those blind/deaf buys from like Half Price Books some time back. He's a multi-instrumentalist. Plays the mabira, or thumb piano, as well as flugelhorn, and the kudu, which is an antelope horn, somewhere between an alp horn and a flute in timbre, as well as singing. Now his voice is very, very interesting approach. In an odd way, it almost kind of reminds me a little bit, this could just be me, my own mind, but like Paul Simon, I kind of hear a little bit of, but maybe Paul Simon as the lounge singer / jazz crooner. You hear some scatting, you hear some yodeling, even this kind of warbling approach. and as much as that might sound off-putting, it's still worth hearing because he has really, for the lyrical quality, the way he uses his voice, but also he composes and writes the lyrics on here. Seems like a lot of the songs have kind of a double meaning. The metaphor for being, pointing to more, social issues, but on the surface it may sound more like, it could be like an environmental piece or just impressions of what's going on around him in a more surface way. But I think, to me, it really does run deeper. And there's a song on here, To Kill a Songbird, in memory of Steve Biko. So maybe on the surface you wouldn't really know what that was about unless you just read into it a little bit deeper. But yeah, just a very distinctive voice in a literal and figurative way. And again, very good on all of his instruments. Real nice lineup on here too. Howard Levy plays a variety of instruments, dulcimer, marimba, harmonica. Paul Wertico's on drums, local musician, played with Pat Metheny Group for many years, and a lot of really interesting projects of his own. See Eric Hochberg on bass, real nice bass playing, and Steve Eisen on the various woodwinds. If you like African music, music of the Caribbean to a certain degree, even not exactly traditional jazz, somewhat blues based, but like sort of art ensemble of Chicago territory at times. You could really enjoy this. And again, for the vocals too, give them a chance and listen to the lyrics and read them, which I'd always have a hard time over the years doing. But if you read along and just kind of consider what's being sung and how he's approaching it, it's worth checking out. Yeah, Paul Berliner with Kudu. If I showed the label or not. It's on Flying Fish, 1979. Next up, David Darling, Journal October, solo cello, solo debut for ECM in 1979. Yeah, I'd read something about Manfred saying to him, Manfred Eicher, really just saying, reach as deep as you can when you're in your playing. It's like, that's all I really want to hear, just go as deep as you can. And I feel he really did, as he really does on so much of his music. Primarily cellist, plays a lot of other instruments, though here he's primarily on cello, some percussion and voice. Starting right in, playing a very kind of slow, kind of languid, chamberish sound with bowed cello overlaying each other. Very rather melancholy, perfect for the time, for the season. But then he kind of goes into something of a kind of angular approach. He's bowing these very kind of short, choppy lines. Throughout the album, he finds a really nice balance between that sort of thing, more angular, occasionally harsh, more experimental, and more romantic and very much hard on his sleeve, kind of going back and forth, but not sounding too sharp of a contrast. And it kind of goes back and forth through most of these pieces. When you get to minor blue, that's just pure, to me, that's just pure bliss. So beautiful, so melodic and touching, really, the way he approaches melody and playing kind of these bass lines where he just kind of overlays a slow undulating melody. Very, very singing quality. As much as anyone I've heard really makes the cello sound like a voice, which I really think, I always felt that it did. Absolutely gorgeous. And going into Clouds, which is kind of almost like a continuation of the piece from something of a different angle. And he sings a little bit on here. You can hear a little bit of lyrics, can't quite make them out, but using his voice as an instrument as well, kind of an extension of the cello and just kind of weaving back and forth. And his solo cello pieces in general, again, kind of have that slightly harsher, more angular quality, but still also really showing incredible technical skill, but able to really blend it, balance it with true feeling. And the final piece, blending his electric and acoustic cellos. The electric cello almost approaching it like a guitar. He's plucking it, and even with bowing it, having kind of a slight, almost like a theremin quality, kind of mysterioso. But just a beautiful album overall, challenging as well as melodic and lyrical, and it's a wonderful debut from David, who I believe is still around today and has done a great variety of different things. So that'd be a nice introduction to him in general, and if you're getting into ECM, what they were doing at the time. The label. Yeah, David Darling, Journal October solo cello from 1979. Another 79 album. And finally, Nightcrawlers. Been referred to as the was it New Jersey's answer to Tangerine Dream. I mean, they're a synthesizer-based group, a trio, and you could hear shadings of that influence, as they were influenced by a lot of artists throughout the 70s as they were starting. It's made up of Tom and Peter Gulch, brothers. I believe Peter was slightly older, and Dave Lunt. I think they started playing together and recording around 79, I want to say, and Dave joined a year or two later to make it a trio. You see their various respective instrumentation here. Peter taking up the lion's share of the instrumentarium credits there. Recorded in summer of 1983, came out in 1984. It's based out of Camden, New Jersey. And right away I think you could hear a pretty distinctive approach in the way that they use synthesizers, electronic percussion. The percussion maybe being a little more subdued, not quite as obvious. Even the sequencers, it's not like you would have with Tangerine Dream or Klaus, who they're compared to, where theirs was more maybe out front. Theirs is a little bit more subtle, maybe as harmonic as it is rhythmic. And even the blending of texture and melody, harmony, rhythm is really nicely balanced throughout. All four pieces kind of sound as much alike as they sound different in a sense, all with a sense of similar sense of gradual unfolding and pacing, traveling backwards with kind of a light tinkling, something of a sequencer where they just kind of gradually build off of. Again, the electronic percussion comes in, but doesn't sound too like it's overtaking it, the way some of it in the 80s, you would have heard. The drum machine kind of takes the attention away from what they're doing as a unit. It never happens here. They really blend that in nicely. Tunswood to me sounds like, it feels like the desert to me. Just a long expanse of somewhat of a desolate landscape that just kind of gradually adds features as you're kind of almost kind of an aerial view, but not too high. You're just kind of just low enough to kind of get a sense of everything. You can see just a little bit more, the landscape varying a little bit more, maybe some cactus, maybe some mountains, and then you're starting to accelerate, and as more instruments come in and the melody comes in, a lot of interesting phrasing too with the melody. I think Peter was considered did more of the textural sort of thing, as well as the sequencers, and Tom and Dave were a little bit more melodic and harmonic, more keyboard based directly as they went. Modulus 4 seems like one of the more maybe less organic of the electronic, since they seem to be mostly analog based. You could almost kind of imagine cyborgs coming out and inhabiting the landscape. You just have this kind of metallic sense of these figures kind of appearing, but lending the kind of a science fiction feel, but not to where it's cliched, but just kind of get that subtle imagery, and Spring Torsion kind of being an extension of that. Again, the pacing overall is just something about the pacing and the way they gradually unfold. It never sounds directionless to me. There's always a sense of, it's always very coherent, just the way they kind of build things up. I think this is their first studio album, actual LP. For several years before that and throughout the rest of the 80s, they were mostly recording onto cassette releases, and they were quite literally a electronic garage band. I think it was in Tom's garage. A lot of those tapes were recorded. There's a real nice compilation. I think it's called the Biophonic Boombox Recordings, which had that for a little while. It's a nice compilation of just the stuff they recorded on cassette, so you kind of get a sense of the contrast of the rawness of that and something a little more refined here. But if you're interested in anything related to what's known as Berlin School or electronic music that went well beyond that at this time, I would definitely recommend this. And Nightcrawlers, a group I've been enjoying for quite a while and digging into a little more. There's a couple nice interviews. If I can remember, link them below. Peter Gulch himself was interviewed fairly recently, and Chuck Van Zyl has a lot of history in the group. You can learn a lot more about the group if you're interested in looking into them further. Nightcrawlers from 1983-84 on a Synchronos label, which I believe Chuck Van Zyl is still running to this day, releasing albums on. So yeah, we'll do it for this time. Sharing more listens, and we'll see what comes next. Always new things, new old things getting into, and yeah, Halloween's coming up soon, and I'm getting ready for that, and we do a video and show a few things I've been getting into. Take it from there. Hope all is well with you all. It's absolutely gorgeous right here, and hope it's as nice as possible where you're at and you're soaking it up. Well, to the next one. Peace, love, and joy.